Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Brent Hoberman. How are you, Brent?
Pretty good. Yeah, it's exciting. We're in tech, we're in London.
Not at Glastonbury?
Not this year.
Not at this
Having
year.
never been any other year, still not.
Really?
Still not.
Oh.
Never been.
You and me both. You and me both.
Yeah.
And you've just finished Founders Forum. That was good.
That was all right. Yeah. No, we did. We ran 8 events that week, so that was fun. Yeah.
I don't know how you do it. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, Brent Hoberman is a legend. Yes. He is the co-founder with Martha Lane Fox of lastminute.com, which you may have heard of. And now these days, a founder, co-founder, chairman of many, many different things, and including Founders Factory, First Minute Capital, and the list goes on. I'm going to go through some of this with you, because, but cast your mind back to a rooftop in Soho when I was chatting with you in the late 90s when you were doing lastminute.com, and you pretty much had the world at your feet at that point, didn't you? But you took lastminute.com to an IPO with it was sold, in fact, to Sabre for $2 billion. Sorry,
1.1 billion.
1.1 billion. Sold to Sabre for 1.1, but it had a valuation, bookings, sorry, of 2 billion. Yes, exactly. Bookings.
Yes, exactly.
But originally, you were an analyst, weren't you?
Well,
so you were
strategy consultant.
Strategy consultant. So why did you make the flip from being a consultant to being an entrepreneur? What made you do that?
I think I went into consulting as a way to become an entrepreneur. So it was very calculated. So I started wanting to be an entrepreneur when I was like 12 years old or something. My grandfather started with one clothes shop in South Africa and then built it up into 650. So I saw that he loved what I did. And then I just loved gadgets. And for me, basically, the internet was the ultimate gadget. Like I say, there's anecdotes of when we all first saw the internet and fell in love with it. So that was one thing. Then I was basically, consultancy is brilliant because you're paid to learn and you're paid to analyze the future. So I was seeing what the future was going to be like. And I thought of the idea for lastminute.com after I was fired from my first job. So I'm very proud of being...
What was that?
Another strategy consultancy. It was called Mars & Company. And for anyone who hasn't been offered a job offer by Bain or McKinsey, I would have ended up there if they'd offered me one. So I'm quite lucky they didn't. I then ended up at a spin-out of those guys. And basically after 20 months, there was I learned a lot about culture at Mars & Co. And I think I can say this publicly, how not to do it. A culture of absolute fear. And I was fired partly for being a prima donna. So one thing you'll be proud of me, Mike, what I did was I was going to launch a pretty rubbish business when I was at Mars & Co. And what I said to my boss, I said, look, you never really need me to do meetings anyway, but one day, I'll be honest with you, like at 8 a.m. on this date, 3 weeks in advance, I'm going to meet with the public carriage office, the people who regulate taxis. The idea is so bad, I won't bore you with the idea, but it was something to do with taxis. And I'm like, I'm going to have that because I owe it to myself to have this chance of doing it. He deliberately, the one client meeting I had ever, he then set it up for that date. So, of course, I didn't go. He and I could then pass each other in corridors. We're on non-speaking terms. And basically, they fired me and said, you should go to somewhere like Goldman Sachs. Yeah. To which I was actually very thrilled. I was like, McKinsey didn't take me. I don't think Goldman's will take me either. But anyway, as I walked out of that meeting, as luck would have it, there was a voicemail. You remember voicemail?
Vaguely.
Yeah. And the voicemail was offering me a job at this wonderful strategy consultancy, which was media and telecom. So it was there where I forced me to go.
Did you met Martha Lane Fox there, didn't
Martha
you?
was a Spectrum Strategy Consultant, was a strategy consultant in media and telecoms.
Yeah.
And I was the 10th employee, and Martha was the 11th. I actually rather brilliantly said to them, not sure we should hire her, because they said, they were all like, Brent, she's blonde, she's nice, of course you'll say we should just hire her. And then when I asked her about spreadsheet modeling, because I was then the junior doing spreadsheet modeling, and the idea was that the next person was going to take over from me doing spreadsheet modeling, and I asked Martha about models, and she only made jokes about actually fashion modeling and stuff, so I was like, oh, I'm not sure she wants to do this bit. But
But
But luckily she got hired anyway. No one listens to me anyway, Mike. You know that. So rather luckily for me, she got hired, and we did a lot of great things together.
So you did some fantastic things together, and you did lastminute.com. What are some of the things that stick out for you from that era in terms of the?
Well, I guess going way back, as I was sitting around a boardroom table last night with EasyJet and many other partners of Founders Factory, and we could go into that later. But one of the things that reminded me of was an anecdote when Martha and I went up to a shed in Luton to see Stelios, and at the time, none of you will remember. Shed? It was, I don't know, it was not very nice.
Right.
It was
porter cabin.
Yeah, exactly, probably. And what happened was at the time there were only the phone number was on the planes, and we were like, Stelios, you know, this internet thing, you know, you should really sell on the internet. And we were trying to explain to him why the internet was going to be amazing. And that anecdote is really to say that was one of many, many conversations we had at the time. And now it seems ridiculous to say back in 1998, we were convincing people that the internet was going to be big, and then we had to convince them that people would put their cards online, and then we had to convince them that they would buy travel online. And most of them never believed any of it. And what I love is that so many of the people who ran those big package tour operator companies who said no one will ever buy travel online have finally been fired.
Right. That's good. Thank God they have, and I'm definitely not working anymore. So now you're doing First Minute Capital. You did a fund previously called Pro Founders.
Yes.
That's still going.
It is, yes.
And so what did you want to do new with First Minute Capital?
Yeah, so look, the idea is, as you've heard, you've had a whole panel of venture capitalists here. You've heard that the best entrepreneurs have no problem attracting money very, very quickly. Look, some of great entrepreneurs, it's tougher too, but so it can be. But often, you have to differentiate with pools of capital. So we were very much, you know, it's the idea of, and we've heard it a few times before, but not as much in Europe, entrepreneurs backing entrepreneurs. So the idea for First Minute Capital was to say, how do we get the best investors in our fund? And that is, the punchline is, we've ended up with 30 founders of billion-dollar tech businesses and the CEOs of companies like WPP and ProSieben, et cetera, and Atomico and Tencent and Henkel, and this amazing group that we're very privileged to have as investors. And the main point is, what's that mean? It means that we can lean on them, and they can help our startups.
But you obviously, I mean, apart from being a very charming chap and a nice guy, you also had a great contact book. What was the sell to those huge partners to get them on board and to back this from their perspective?
The sell was that we could stand up in front of an entrepreneur, that we would get deal flow, because some of us are old, like me. Not you, Mike, me. So we've been around a while, so we'd have deal flow. And then the question in venture is, will you get amazing deal flow? And then will you be able to pick reasonably well? So I've done lots of angel deals over the last ridiculously long amount of time. So I could point to these companies, said, look, you see this one, you know, Allen.eu in France or whatever, or you know, there were many from those days. Say, here's the list of companies that we've done, and get your guide. You know, having done that previously, first investor in that. So I could say that we can pick entrepreneurs because we can get pattern recognition on the magic that they have, and basically, very simply, will they be able to build amazing teams?
Right. So, well, you've also built a sort of an ecosystem, haven't you, to help that with Founders Factory, with the accelerator, Founders for the Future. Do you consider these part of the ecosystem you're building, or separate entities, or they feed into each other? How does it work?
The thing about Founders Forum and the stuff we built out of it is there actually wasn't. People often ask me, you know, what's your 10-year plan? What was the strategy? And it's terrible to say there wasn't one. It was really built upon, doing what you love every day, which is the first thing that we all should do. Just do what you're passionate about. And then I think with hindsight, I've sort of analyzed it, is that actually, if you have big enough ideas, the thing I've been able to do since those early days is to have big enough ideas that you can attract great people. And that means I can leverage what I've got and do it across lots of different things. Founders Factory being a great example of just a big idea. You know, not many people would say we're going to get 6 of the world's largest corporates into an entity and build hundreds of startups over the next few years. And actually, that vision that we pitched was actually much smaller than what we're doing now. We'll be in 4 countries unofficially by the end of the year. And I think next year we could double that again, and we could be doing thousands of startups a year.
So other accelerators have tried to do this huge scale play, like 500 startups, etc. What do you think you're going to be able to bring different to this idea? Well,
again, the thing is always put yourself as the customer. So I tried to say at the beginning of the founder's factory journey, and actually one of the first businesses I almost ever did was an incubator accelerator pre-lastminute.com. I was going to do one. But then so years later, I looked around and you see these maps of accelerator incubators and there are millions of them. So my pitch to my investors was, there is an accelerator and an incubator bubble. There are too many of them, and I'm going to do one. And the point was, I'm going to do one that if I was the 28-year-old Brent Hoberman starting lastminute.com now, that I would want to join, where the value exchange is right. So what I mean by that is, by partnering with the corporates, we can help you move a lot faster. By raising a lot of money, we're one of the best funded, maybe the best funded accelerator incubator in Europe. We can hire 70 full-time employees and act as a talent magnet. So that's, again, the key thing is, any one of you building a startup, what you want to do is ask yourself, am I going to be a talent magnet? And honestly, if you're not, do something else. So we thought, we're going to hire amazing talent that we can say to the corporates, you can't hire, and talents that we can say to the world's best entrepreneurs, these people are going to help you so you can build your business much faster, and that is worth the exchange. So we also take somewhere between 3 and 10% as the accelerator, and most accelerators say it's X% and that's it.
Yeah,
so our
it's
point,
quite set.
It's sort of normal. And we're like, actually, my key thing was, I didn't want to, if Nicholas Zenström, founder of Skype, had come to me and said, Brent, you're only worth 3% of my business, most accelerators would say, no, sorry, we're worth 7%. And he'd say, sod off, go away. No, I'm not. And no deal. And so the point is, I'm happy to take a lower stake in businesses that we think are absolute rocket ships, not really just for the money you'd make about them, but for what that does for your ecosystem. Because having people like that in your orbit helps, to be honest, your brand, but also helps the other entrepreneurs.
Well, that's pretty convincing argument. I certainly can say that, especially having witnessed a lot of accelerators rise and fail. You have a pretty good Rolodex. You network in very high levels. You do an annual reception at number 10 when you do Founders Forum. You speak to people from all walks of life. More seriously, without too many jokes, I guess, from me, I'll try and rein myself in. But what sort of things do you say to them, seriously, about the future, about how we're going to grapple with the really, really big changes that are going to happen in society with the effects of technology, combined with the aura of the rather febrile politics that we have at the moment?
Well, I think one thing, and maybe we should have a go again, I think you've done this previously, but should we have another go and say to the startup community, what policies would you like to see government execute on? Because I say that because I'm constantly trying to think, because I am co-chair of the Prime Minister's Business Council on Startup Scale-Ups and Entrepreneurs. So we are constantly trying to think, what are those policies?
Right.
And we've actually done a lot as the UK. I'll give you a more sophisticated call out than that I'd love to do, which is to say, across, let's say Europe, or actually you can do the world, but let's say Europe, what are the policies that governments have done that have been most impactful in each geography? Because what I'm surprised at is I hear these things anecdotally from my European friends or foreign friends, and then I don't find that there is any good analysis on what has actually worked in each market to support entrepreneurship. Yet we're all being asked the question, and we're asking it constantly, why don't we have a Google question in Europe, and all these sort of things. So if you're asking me for some of my top, are you asking me for some of my top ones or not? I can give you some of the top.
Go for it. But I mean,
look, we both know being attractive to immigrants, and I am one, I'm originally from South Africa, is critical. And we heard from your earlier panel about how tech is doing brilliantly in the UK, but we don't know how much better it would be doing if we didn't have this uncertainty, is the real issue.
Right.
So the point is, we all have anecdotes of people who haven't come to this country because of what's going on and just because of rhetoric sometimes. So how do we counteract that rhetoric with much more positive signals telling talented entrepreneurs we want them here and they're welcome?
I mean, there are glib answers like London is open, etc. But there must be more to it than that, surely.
No, I think it's bold. I mean, I've always said I think that whatever the policy test is, if the old Daily Mail, I won't say the new one, but if the Daily Mail under Paul Dacre hated it, if you can think, if it would have been on the front page of the Daily Mail, sort of like, we are paying developers, £100,000 each to move to London, and we're going to put them up and we're going to educate them and from wherever they are, and then you could have seen the Mail screaming about a terrible idea this was, then you'd know that that's a really good idea.
Probably a good idea, yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Well, yes, but he's long gone, more or less.
Gone, yes.
But just to press you on one point quickly, we know what we want with entrepreneurs. We know that entrepreneurs are very much a massive driver of the economy, but how are we going to bring everybody else along? And one of the things that's happened in the last few years is the conversation's flipped from tech being great for Britain, etc., to tech being part of the elite, and there's a tech-lash going on with big tech, Facebook, etc. How do we bring everybody along with the big changes that are going to happen in the next few years? Truck drivers losing their jobs, you name it.
Look, I'm I guess a bear or an optimist, depending on where you look at it. For automation, I think it's going to be absolutely brutal on jobs. And I do think that lots of what we've seen with the Brexit, where we ended up, was not actually an anti-immigration thing. It was actually a fear for my job thing, which a lot of it was a backlash, actually really against technology. So to your point, yes, is there much more? Look, tech for good, I think, we would expect to launch some sectors in Founders Factory in that. We actually had a board chat last night, a tremendous enthusiasm from our corporates about doing that. So that's quite exciting. I think anywhere where we can show people in towns and not cities what tech can do for them. I mean, I'd love to see a fab lab in every city, on every high street. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think we would love to bring more coding schools and proper ones. We're the only city almost in Europe that doesn't have a proper école calendar, a school without teachers, which the French have pioneered. I think we could do lots more with lifelong learning and digital skills. And I think on the environment would be a classic example now where we've sort of had it wasn't quite the dot-com bust of clean tech, but we sort of did have it. And now I think what we're seeing is the moment really is now for clean tech and environmental solutions. So I think that's a really exciting area where tech for good can flourish.
Well, that's a great list you've just thought up there. Finally, you have so many projects, so many things you do. What sort of gets you up in the morning? What keeps you going?
Robots.
Robots?
No, well, I'll say that is one of my, it's one of my babies that I'm very excited about. Is so one of the joys of what I do is it's having a wonderful train set. So I always remember that at lastminute.com.
This isn't going to be a story about buses, is it?
Yeah, I paint buses at night, exactly. Yeah.
Do you paint trains instead?
Yeah, exactly. No, so the train set, by that I mean, look, when I did lastminute.com, one of the surreal moments of the IPO was raising 120 million pounds and thinking, my God, now I can spend 25 million a year on technology. So now it's, how do I have crazy ideas and execute them? And I love it when it's ideas that everybody says no to. So the most obvious example is the robot restaurant one.
Yes.
So
which you recently invested.
It was an idea. I literally posted. We've had a lot of trouble finding people to run it. So we posted on LinkedIn and we went out. We found now an amazing team. And we got, as you know, we were seed funded. I'm chairing this one. It's out of Founders Factory, but I'm chairing it as well. And it is the seed investor is Ocado. Having most venture funds, your previous panel, not had the guts to do it. But as soon as Ocado were in, every venture fund wanted it.
Surprise.
Right, yeah. So I think, this is robotics for food preparation and then consumer-facing robot restaurants. And And it's great for me to sit on both sides of the table, to be the venture capitalist sometimes, and then to have the empathy that when we go with ideas and try and get them funded, and that we're trying to get 50 businesses funded a year, because everything that comes out of Founders Factory, we're trying to get it funded. So we see how hard it is on one side, having said it's still tricky to get people, because the best businesses are ones where you see the future and everyone else doesn't.
Well, Brent Hoberman, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you very much for coming to the Europas. Thank you. Brent, everybody.